Today on the Topping Show, states are caught changing arrest race data and classifying African Americans as white. The European Union will allow gas engines beyond 2035, but there's a big caveat. Micron is retiring their crucial memory for consumers as they focus on more AI hardware creation. A manned engine swaps a V8 Hellcat engine into a Chrysler Pacifica minivan. And Ford hits 138 recalls of the year, a new record. All of that and much more on the Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of the Topping Show is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. Ease me, see that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or business owner, reach out to the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, still giving away a free Flamethrower with every IT purchase, with Picatinny rail adapters, so you can mount it to any standard AR-15 like all awesome accessories can be. Go to toppingtechnologies.com and click the Flamethrower button to learn more and see me shooting a Flamethrower. And lastly, trying to get 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you can click that button and tell your friends and your enemies, I would greatly appreciate it. Now going over to the business part of the podcast, you have Micron retiring their iconic crucial memory to focus more on AI. Now, this brought to us thanks to Emma, who's a writer at TheVerge.com. And, well, oddly enough, you don't need a visual disclaimer. Usually talk about a lot of ugly vehicles here. But in this case, not too crazy, just a good old-fashioned, or what was good old-fashioned, crucial memory. Again, credit to Emmy at TheVerge.com. And they say, quote, "Crucial is shutting down because Micron wants to sell its RAM and SSDs to AI companies instead. The long-standing provider of consumer memory is winding down as prices spike, and Micron shifts its focus to AI." Which is yet another reason it's going to hurt consumers in terms of most businesses following all the investment dollars, all the venture capital, and AI is the most magical thing since the dot-com. Will there be a greater crash? Debatable, but a lot of these businesses, they're starting to focus more on the data centers. Now, most of these companies usually have a consumer division and they have a business division. And sometimes it used to be the business divisions, usually much more higher volume, depending on what you're selling, more or less better profit margins. But again, usually most of these tech companies had a hybrid approach and they'd have slightly more durable products for the businesses. They're willing to pay more for greater reliability. And it's going to hurt consumers because, well, I'm a little biased. I like this stuff. I bought crucial memory in the past for some of my PCs. Always worked pretty darn good. And this means one less manufacturer. And very similar to products like televisions, there are 20 to 30 television brands. However, realistically, there's basically 3 television manufacturers that actually make it. And then they, put other people's, they sell their parts and they sell it to other companies. They just white label it. There's actually only a couple of manufacturers. That's why when one of these companies starts to focus all on business, this is going to hurt consumers. Now, again, credited to Emmy at TheVerge.com. They say, quote, "Micron is retiring their crucial brand," which, pun moderately intended, it was crucial to the company. I mean, not really, they'll make more money on AI, but the pun was attempted. Now they say, quote, "Marking an end to the line of budget-friendly solid-state drives and RAM kits. As reported earlier by videocards.com, Micron says winding down its consumer-focused business will, quote, improve supply and support for larger strategic customers in faster-growing segments, quote unquote." Which, yeah. And in business, there is a cliche, though true, 80-20 principle, where 80% of your results comes from 20% of your efforts. In business, a lot of these companies are very top-heavy in terms of, again, when it's business-to-business model, they get a majority of their business from like 4 to 5 Fortune 100 companies. This is very true for tech as well. And again, those contracts and those sales greatly help because, again, just like when you go to Costco, when you get those big sales, you get all the orders, the components of those things that you're manufacturing, and get a lower price per unit. They could pass on that savings to other customers. So again, that's one of the reasons why high volume sales are greatly valued for businesses. And yeah, there are a lot of companies focusing on the AI, and they're going to chase the money, and they're going to make more money there. Now they say the brand's shutdown is a huge blow to PC builders and hobbyists who are already dealing with skyrocketing RAM prices linked to a surge in demand for AI companies. OpenAI, for example, struck a deal with SK Hynix and Samsung to make 900,000 DRAM per month for its Stargate project. Which, yeah, that is a pretty penny. And a great example of an OEM Samsung, they make a lot of memory, including memory for servers. It's one of those things where, they'll make it to Dell specs or Hewlett Packard Enterprise specs. But again, Samsung manufactures it. Now, they also say that now there's going to be one less brand selling consumer-focused memory for PCs, potentially intensifying the global memory shortage. Soaring demand for RAM is already impacting prices at CyberPower PC, Framework, and Raspberry Pi, while Hewlett Packard has even hinted at raising prices of its devices or equipping them with less memory. They note that Micron will keep shipping Crucial products until the end of February 2026 and provide continued warranty, service, and support, which at least they're doing the right thing in terms of consumer advocacy and, taking care of the customer long term. But again, this is going to be rough. You thought prices were bad before. They're going to get a lot worse. And Micron is one of the best manufacturers on the planet. Crucial was the name that, again, most people would know. Kind of like how General Motors makes, Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, and GMC. The average person who, GM is old enough, they probably know it, but you know what I mean. The biggest brand is Crucial. And again, another company might step up to the plate to manufacture it, but the issue with this industry, especially when it comes to memory and fabrication units, these fabs are comically expensive. You're talking about billion-dollar investments, and the clean rooms are extremely tedious to make. That's one of the most difficult things about these fabrication factories. And again, consumer goods, PCs are not very profitable. Now, again, this is a component of PCs. A lot of hobbyists are buying this individually. But when you look at like a laptop, these things are only making maybe 4 to 5% profit margin when someone sells it, which again is not a good business model. That's barely better than groceries, which is the worst industry ever when it comes to making a profit or an ROI. And again, it'll be interesting to see how much this spikes prices as you have, again, one less manufacturer. And again, there's already been a couple of companies shifting very similar to this. Not good for hobbyists, especially people who like to build their own PCs. Because again, the more options, the better. But in terms of, a business opportunity, like, there's a gap in the market. If you actually want, like the traditional business, you'd, see a gap in the market, you would start your own company, you'd go after that market. This one has one of the highest, most preposterous barriers to entry. It would really only realistically be another company like Intel, which Lord knows they need sales. Maybe they diversify and start going after this market again when, again, Intel years ago did make some, SSDs. And I wonder if they'll actually get back to the RAM. But again, Lord knows Intel needs the sales. They're not doing great, but not great for consumers, but interesting business news. And let me know, have you ever used Crucial in your PC builds, or do you ever recognize the logo when you pop open the hood of your PC? Let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. I'm going to go over to the cultural part of the podcast, the call culture, that is. You have a man doing a Hellcat V engine swap on a Chrysler Pacifica, one of the most preposterously awesome things you can do, bar none. Especially if he has 3 pedals, but I don't think he went that far. That's brought to us thanks to Brian Hurd at thedrive.com. And they say, quote, "Here's a Hellcat swapped Pacifica because Chrysler hasn't built one yet. The most surprising thing about this V8 powered Pacifica is that Chrysler didn't build it." Which, seeing a minivan with a Hellcat, good old V8 engine crammed into the engine bay, I don't think it's possible to see this picture and not smile. It is one of the coolest things ever. And again, the old Dodge, they should have done this decades ago, back when they were in the heyday. They're making a comeback. They're saying V8s are back. You got the old CEO of Dodge. Thank God he's come back to save the company. As again, Stellantis crashed 47% revenue and like 43% profit last year. They need a Hail Mary return touchdown in terms of coming back from the depths of, terrible, terrible cars and vehicles. Again, I can't look at this and not smile. So a good old V8 powered minivan. Now, they say, quote, "It's a joke we often make and may even wonder yourself, Chrysler Pacifica Hellcat, when will it come out?" Which, again, that's like the top tier model or trim level that they did on pretty much all their vehicles. And yeah, that would have been so cool if they did it from the factory. Now they say, quote, "Well, here's one thing to engage. It's one thing to engage in a meme, another to entirely to go off and do the thing. Well, a gentleman did that very thing, boarding a Hellcat powertrain into a van that looks like an abandoned somewhere in a Florida swamp after a work trip gone horribly wrong. Think part sleeper, part creeper, you're basically there. Like any good Hellcat, this one began as a wrecked LX car and a dream. The donor was a green Challenger Hellcat Red Eye, meaning it had nearly 800 horsepower as it came from the factory versus the 707 found in the standard Hellcat that appears to have spent some time shiny side down for an uncomfortable introduction to the jaws of life. But as badly rashed as the body is, the engine and gearbox work just fine. As for the van, Well, that required a little bit more creativity. The Pacifica still rides on a now relatively old platform that was originally intended for front wheel and all-wheel drive. Minivans there are also powered by a traversely mounted engine. Despite the factory provision for rear axle, the van structure nonetheless needed plenty of serious surgery to accommodate a supercharged V8, which, yeah. You can see them retrofitting the interior, salvaging the engine, taking it out of the wrecked Hellcat, which, that can't be right. It looks like the catalyst converters are still there. That can't be real. This story must be fake. Now, they say the team's original plan was to put together a little before showcasing the van's exhaust note. Unfortunately, the van arrived with a cracked oil pan, and their efforts at a parking lot rebuild proved fruitless. The car instead went off to visit with a chassis surgeon, who actually has some good news. The engine compartment is actually roomier than the Grand Cherokee Trackhawks, which also had the Hellcat-powered engine. The only issue was lack of space for the gearbox in the rear of the bay. Nothing a Solid can't solve, right? Which, yeah. Again, if you want an engine swap, you can make it happen. I still keep telling my buddy, instead of, fixing his Land Rover with another, fixing the V8 it came with. I mean, for 10 grand, you can get a V10 Dodge Viper engine and transmission on the electronicbay.com. I mean, that'd be a lot of miles per gallon and be more reliable. Well, anything would actually be more reliable than a Land Rover, but nevertheless, they say, quote, after cutting the chassis from the firewall back to accommodate the transmission and drive shaft, the Hemi ends up fitting nicely under the hood, which, oh, yes, it does. And it says, even leaving enough room for the Challenger's original cooling components. The interior fit isn't quite as clean. That center console is a hot mess, but things line up well enough for a startup and an engine rev demo. There's no footage of it yet, but we suspect they're saving that for a future video. Now, if only all Chrysler Pacificas sounded this good, which, again, this is something where, this is an enthusiast. In terms of car culture, love engine swaps, especially when you're giving cars more life, more cylinders, more awesomeness. And one of those things where Chrysler is trying to make a big comeback. Lord knows they need it. Well, maybe not so much Chrysler. That's that was the old business that owned Dodge and Jeep in the United States. Fiat bought them years ago when they went bankrupt in 2009. Then they rebranded Fiat. Now it's going to be Stellantis. And again, Chrysler, the only thing they make now in terms of the actual Chrysler branded products is a Pacifica, which I always thought was a waste of money because personally, I thought the Dodge Grand Caravan had greater cultural significance and more sales and more relevance. Now, anecdotally, my parents, I believe, had a 2001 Dodge Grand Caravan. It had a spoiler, which is hilarious. Obviously, it's a boring automatic transmission. Sad. But it was pretty good until it rusted out inevitably because of poor build quality. But if you really want to catch more headlines, now, they would probably, there's always the collectors who want to treat these things as investment vehicles, which, silly, not financial advice, but very few cars have ever beat the S&P 500 index. Just a fun fact of the day. Again, as Dodge comes back and they're putting V8s back into the engines, making consumers happy, being loud, dumb, obnoxious, and sporty, which is what the customers want, having a third pedal, some of these things. Again, they should put that good old Hellcat engine into everything they sell. Now, granted, in terms of sales volume, how many of these vans would actually be sold if they did this from the factory? I mean, if I'm my most optimistic, maybe 1,000 per year. Again, this would be very much as, usually on average guys like cars a little bit more than gals. This would be very much a husband going, if I'm going to drive a damn minivan, it's going to have V8, dang it. It's going to have some muscle. I mean, I can't believe think like who would rationalize buying one? And I can't believe I just used the word rationale and buying when it comes to a Chrysler product or Dodge product. You'll buy because of love them. You're not rationalizing it. Again, they probably sell maybe 1,000 units every year of the red eye Dodge Grand Caravan with Chrysler Pacifica. But just to have that iconic lineup, which they did, I believe, actually a decade ago. They had the whole SRT8 lineup where they had, the big old V8 awesome engine did everything. You're talking, well, not just the Challenger, the Charger, but also the Jeep Grand Cherokee, the Jeep Wagoneer, whatever they want to call this line of cars that, frankly, they make too many Jeeps for me to keep track of. But just that lineup of the best you can make per vehicle is such good marketing. It's almost the kind of a halo car to show, again, we know you're not going to buy this most likely, but this is the peak of what our engineers can do. This is the vision and the grand idea that keeps the brand alive. It's what makes people smile. I mean, the best example in terms of business history, I think, past 20 years in the auto industry would be like the Audi R8. Again, that was a V10 or V8 with a stick shift, rear engine sports car, got people in the showrooms, and they sold a lot of Audis. couple of the R8s, but again, most of them were, the entry-level sedans, but got people in the showroom. It was great advertising. And again, in terms of just getting back to the spirit of Dodge, that's just the spirit of giving the customer the loud, fun, fast vehicles. Practicality be damned. Who gives a damn about fuel economy? Just have fun. I think they have to do this. Give some large, obnoxious, awesome Brembo brakes. Give an extra sound system that, well, Lord knows you actually should not need a good sound system if you have a V8. You should be able to hear the engine note and the exhaust. Give it a nice Borla exhaust in the factory, maybe a Corsa, whatever you want. But again, in terms of really bringing the brand back, letting consumers know, hey, we listen to you. We know you don't want these crappy EVs that Lord knows we lose money on every single one. We're back, baby. That would be, again, if they want to do like a Super Bowl commercial, like a great reveal of us being back from the dead, back from barely existing, that would be one of the coolest things. And I can't but think that would dramatically increase the sale, increase your brand reputation, and just let all customers know, like, yeah, we messed up. We listened to our foolish leader and some governments, and we're pushing back. We know what you want. We're listening to you. Then after that, they get rid of that crappy, unreliable straight six Hurricane engine, which is already having issues, but another topic for another time perhaps. But in terms of car culture, this is probably one of the coolest engine swaps we've seen in a while, and it just makes me smile ear to ear. It's one of those things where you might, again, the odds of you seeing this exact one are pretty rare, maybe at a car show at SEMA or something like that, but pretty good car culture I want to shout out. And let me know your thoughts. If they had this for sale in the showroom and you had to get a minivan, that's a caveat. I mean, what would you really have? A Honda Odyssey, Toyota Sienna, or a Dodge Grand Caravan with a Hellcat V8 supercharged engine in there? And if they had that third pedal, oh, you even got my attention. But let me know your thoughts because, as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Now, going over to the political part of the podcast, you have some cities that are changing the racial data of people who are under arrest. Now, this is brought to us thanks to Libs of TikTok, in which she says, quote, all of our criminal statistics are skewed against white people. In this case, she has 4 instances of arrest that occurred over in New Jersey, and which you have, well, 4 African-American men, 2 of which have dreadlocks. They all have beards, though, because true men always has beards, obviously. But yeah, it shows their arrest, and the race, every single time, was white. And then, in 3 of the 4 times, the ethnicity was unknown, and then one of them was Hispanic, which, I mean, some of my friends joke about me not looking really Hispanic. I am, 50%. The guy on the very right in this picture, he's a very large, muscular African-American man, and they say he is Hispanic, which, again, you don't always want to judge a book by the cover. However, he is not Hispanic. And I think that's one of the reasons this went so viral. It got about 150,000 views and 11,000 likes. And this is something that's been happening for years. I think it is a push. I think those in charge of the data, which one of my favorite quotes, one of the only useful things I learned in college was from business statistics, which the professor said, always ask, what is your sample size? What is your sample? Every time you hear a statistic, you should always ask, well, who created the sample size? Where was it? What was it? Because again, people do this all over, left, right, center. People take the data, and with the right sample size, you can get whatever result you want. Even rephrasing a question can get whatever result you want when it comes to a poll. And in this case, well, specifically this is New Jersey, but a lot of people, culturally speaking, in the United States, you look at memes on the Facebook, the Instagram, and on X, many people are bringing up the age-old statistic that I think that's been viral on social media for a couple of years, in which they refer to 30% of the population committing about 50% of the crimes in the United States. Now, granted, that is an instance where they're saying, 13% of the U.S. population currently was African Americans. They're committing 50% of the crimes. Now, if you want to be more granular, it's usually, statistically speaking, African American men. So you could argue that 30% is even less. However, that is one of the most viral statistics that's been out there lately. One way you could change that statistic would be, well, changing the sample size and saying that these guys are white. Now, again, in terms of who's done the most crime in the United States, usually white folks. Now, it does change, obviously, dramatically when you bring in things like per capita. And this is one way you can skew that data. And I'm scrolling down, and it's interesting. They actually have very similar skewed data when it comes to a 4473, which in the United States is, think of it like a job application to purchase a firearm, Or they say if you're Hispanic, you still say that you're white, which most Hispanic people I know would say, I no, that is not, no. But again, that's one of the selections. Now, one of the first comments comes to us thanks to Matt Van Swol. He says, quote, whatever the white criminal rate is astronomically lower than you could have ever imagined. And let me pull up his statistic right here. In which he brings up 4 gentlemen, where in this case they are Hispanic and Asian, and they're all marked white. Apologies, I can't see close enough in terms of where the sample size is from. But again, those are 4, and again, this is anecdotal. It's another 4 people that got 2.7 thousand likes. Those TikTok said, yep, gained 35 likes. Paul Suzupa says, quote, so ridiculous, just imagine what the criminal statistics really say, getting 64 likes. Sagittarius Eternia says, quote, the administration state actively falsifies racial data to manufacture a narrative of white criminality. We see this with the mugshots where obviously non-white offenders are categorized as white to inflate the statistics against the native population. This is not a clerical error, it is a calculated misinformation warfare. The poison to the database to hide the reality of who is actually committing the violence. By blurring the lines, they protect their preferred demographics and demonize the very people they seek to protect. The data is a lie designed to disarm you, getting 50 likes, which, yeah. And again, when the government gets data they don't like, sometimes they just stop collecting it altogether. One of my favorite examples would be the CDC, which I don't think many people are a fan of. To their credit, historically, the CDC did keep track in which people would defend themselves with firearms. That, spoiler, is between 700,000 to several million per year, in which innocent people stopped a bad guy using a firearm. In some cases, just brandishing a weapon. Now, again, not legal advice. In many states, just brandishing a weapon, aka pointing a weapon at someone, is considered use of lethal force. Again, none of this is legal advice. I do a suit on, but in all seriousness, well, during the Biden-Harris administration, that was very much going viral. The Second Amendment was going viral. More and more people buying firearms. Thank God. You're God given right to defend yourself and your family. And the CDC started, and they said, we're no longer going to collect that data because it was making the Second Amendment look really good because it showed people, hey, here is literally 750,000 to several million times per year on average where good guys are stopping bad guys with guns. That is terrible for the anti-gunner narrative, where they want to tell you all guns are bad, especially black guns. Ooh. Spoiler, guns are awesome. Guns are your right. And they stop a lot of bad guys. Government didn't like that. And my theory is that they told the CDC to stop collecting that data because it was hurting the government's anti-gun agenda. Again, I don't have any evidence of that, just my theory of why they would stop collecting that data. Because the sample size was making them look really bad because they wanted to ban guns and confiscate guns. You also have the conservative alternative saying, quote, they're trying to make us out to be more than a threat than we actually are. The Nazis did the same thing to Jews in Germany. This is just what socialists do with their scapegoats. Jeez Louise. There you have the famous meme going around where they're changing, using AI to make the Franklin turtle character into funny books. This one says, Franklin learns about crime statistics, getting 50 likes. Also weird, and I would argue stupid. I would argue, I guess not unconstitutional, but one of my friends works in real estate, and we were talking about, the industry. I'd love to own a house one of these days. It's one of the goals I have in life. And they were telling me how, we're not legally allowed to tell them criminal statistics. So legally, real estate agents aren't allowed to tell you what the crime rate is locally. Now, thank God there are ways to, individually, you go on the internet, you can look that stuff, look up crime rates, sex offender maps, all that kind of stuff. But like a real estate agent isn't allowed to tell you crime statistics? That seems ridiculous. But it's illegal for them to do that. Capernius says, quote, this is not an isolated example either. They're doing this all over the place with many different crime types. This example is from the Tennessee Sex Offender Registry and the Texas Public Sex Offender Registry, in which, in this case, in all 4 instances, you do have African Americans who were classified as white. Although I guess they did get the ethnicity right. The ethnicity was labeled as non-Hispanic, so they got one part right. But obviously, those gentlemen are very much African American. That got 156 likes. A couple of these pictures. They got 156 likes. This is from Viral Dose Daily, and he has a crime chart where it shows the statistics in which, age versus race and when they're most deadly or violent in terms of murders per 100,000 statistics. And that's from a 2021 database, but is African American male between 15 and 24 years old is 207.4 per 100,000, which is the most dangerous. That got 31 likes. Ashley Y says, quote, same pattern always. And they have the famous photo compilation of the pieces of shit who were arrested between 72 and 17 times in which they murdered people and set a girl on fire. That got 83 likes. And yeah, the judges who keep letting these monsters out should be sent to prison. Sarah Smith says, absolutely insanity. She has another picture compilation, 117 likes. Let's see. A lot more anecdotal data of all that. Hobbs says, why did they label them incorrectly? Just put the correct race. Gained 8 likes. Well, again, it's because they want to change the narrative. Crazy Leg says, because then the data might show something inconvenient to their narrative. Well, I was going to say, case in point, get 19 likes. You also have MLC saying, falsifying police records is illegal. What's the punishment? Well, they're government employees, so I'm sure they'll get no punishment at all. At most, and again, this seems to be all over the U.S., I'm sure that at most they'll get paid leave, which it blows my mind that is considered a punishment for the private sector. We're going to pay you to do nothing. You mean a vacation? The public sector blows my mind. Let's see, I'm trying to see if there's any contrarian data, because again, life gets a little bit boring for the echo chamber. Dirk McGillen says, quote, mostly peaceful, violent repeat offenders, gained 12 likes. A couple other folks talking about the statistics on the world population only being 8% white, talking about how they're on the verge of extinction and they're actually the minority. Echo Hopper says, but we're sure Jesus wasn't white, getting 7 likes. Going down more and more. Noskiko Ryan says, statistics are skewed to make whites seem more criminal and minorities less so, getting 26 likes. Rogilo, Texas Mexican Maldiano, long but interesting name, says, quote, so basically they're cooking the books. If you can slap white on anyone's file, you can pretend the numbers look better and keep pushing the same failed sanctuary policies. That's how you manipulate the statistics instead of fixing the crime, getting 8 likes. Aga's the Fix says, the fact that this is still going on is a sign these institutions need to be firing people. Yep, getting 31 likes. Again, as we looked at those examples, it's not just leftist states or shitties, as I pejoratively call cities. Again, you had Tennessee there, you had Texas there. Really kind of shows you, well, who's in charge of these police departments, who's in charge of these policies, and why is anyone getting punished for this? I mean, they are falsifying police records. That's a crime. That's a big issue. Have you ever heard of a single person getting in trouble for that in the past 10 years? Ever? At any news network at all? It should be breaking news. It's not. No one's paying attention to it, really, except for a couple folks on the internet. But yeah, I think they're absolutely doing this to shift a narrative, and I don't think they're going to stop it anytime soon. Trump might try to do something on a federal level. But again, these are state crimes and state statistics. We'll see what kind of mechanism Trump could do to intervene. Let me know, do you think the average person realizes that these statistics are being skewed more and more, and they're being more and more falsified? Let me know your thoughts, because, as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Other interesting business news, the crooked European Union will allow gas engines beyond 2035, but there's a big caveat. Now, this is brought to us thanks to Motor1.com, specifically the writer over there by the name of Adrian Padiano, who's a great writer. And they say, quote, Europe changes its mind, won't ban combustion engines after all. Sales of new ICE cars will continue, but only certain draconian, evil, dictatorial conditions. Okay, I added that, editorial because, well, yeah, the EU is a corrupt, evil government that wants to destroy its own population and its own businesses. But I partially digress, So you can buy them, but they're not going to be viable. These businesses need to grow a pair. Germany needs to grow a pair too, although I would think, like many places, including the United States, their politicians sold out the people decades ago as they destroy their own countries and businesses. And in this case, China's going to win China's just going to win all automotive sales, because this is slightly good news, but I don't think it'll be fiscally viable. Now, I'll explain. Now they say, quote, most automakers are urging the European Union to drop the combustion engine ban planned for 2035. Our companies have legitimate reasons to push back, citing the underdeveloped charging infrastructure and higher EV prices. Yeah, another issue, they all lose money on EVs. To Elon Musk's credit, granted, they get some incentives from the government, and they do sell some of their emissions credits, but to Elon's credit, they do technically make a profit selling an EV. No one else has. Ford loses $48,000 to $52,000 per EV sold, and they have every year for the past 5 years. Some of that cost is because they have to make the factory, you have to do the software, new tooling. But again, everyone is losing money on these EVs, and as EVs are basically just glorified smartphones on wheels, China will beat everyone in terms of ripping off technology and mass production because there's a business and having low regulations, China takes the cake. Or perhaps a better metaphor would be they take what do they eat in China? Rice. I've not been to China. I've been to Chinatown in Chicago decades ago, but nevertheless, another topic for another time perhaps. All the great car companies headquartered in Germany, if they're forced to sell EVs, they're going to go out of business soon. Porsche admitted that they're bleeding money on EVs left and right. And again, China, especially the BYD and VinQuest, I believe another one, they are just going to crush the competition. Now, again, so they're losing money. Also, European Union, the morons, or because they want to hurt their own people, or both, they really can't. They don't have the charging infrastructure. They also are having trouble producing power. They laughed at Donald Trump, but Donald Trump says, why are you relying on Russia for cheap oil, for energy? Why don't you get off that reliance? But instead, Europe decided to, we're going to continue to rely on Russia. Also, it shut down our nuclear factories, which, with the current technology, is the best way to generate energy. And Europe goes, oh no, we'll just continue to be reliant on Russia, which, spoiler, not working out so great for them. Now, they continue saying, quote, additionally, there's a serious risk that the automotive manufacturing industry would lose thousands of jobs if all companies were forced to build only EVs. For a while, the EU seemed unwilling to budge. As recently as this past spring, the cutoff date was still in place. However, mounting pressure to change the legislation is finally working, debatably. A combustion engine will continue after the middle of the next decade. It appears a letter sent by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz to the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen persuaded the government body to back away from the ban. Not enough. Let's say, quote, in your interview with German business newspaper, I'm going to butcher this, but it's not intentional. Usually isn't. And de facto, just me being inept. They say German business paper Handelsblatt, probably. The Commissioner for Sustainable Transport and Tourism said in a letter that had been, quote, very well received in Brussels. Paslos Tsikantos confirmed the combustion engine will continue past 2035, but, here's a caveat, only in cars running on low emission, renewable fuels such as synthetic and biofuels. Which again, right now are prohibitively expensive, though they've been experimented on for decades. Very similar to hydrogen technologies. It's been experimented, it works on a small scale. Porsche is famous for, they have the synthetic fuel that they're experimenting with. But the issue is cost prohibitive, comically so. That's why we've seen no adoption of hydrogen vehicles in mass. You see them anecdotally, Toyota even has a racing team. But again, in terms of mass adoption, too expensive, too complex to actually make and transport the fuel, long story short. Now they say, quote, one relevant example is the HV0100 made entirely from hydrogenated vegetable oil, derived from vegetable oils and animal fats. BMW already deals deals of cars made in Germany with that crappy engine. Well, I did that. And it claimed to curb emissions by 90% compared to regular diesel. Now here's the actual picture of a good engine. Mercedes V12, 12 cylinders of glory. Just needs a stick shift. Now they say, quote, synthetic, Louise. They say, synthetic gasoline is also a possibility that can, too, theoretically lower emissions by 90% versus regular gas. For several years already, Porsche has been experimenting with e-fuel. It has been making synthetic fuel at a plant in Chile since late 2022 using water and carbon dioxide processed by wind energy. The dumbest, most inefficient form of energy on the planet. A windmill takes, depending on where you put it, 20 to 25 years to break even. Yeah, that's why no one invests in those stupid things. They're a terrible, terrible investment. Also not great for the environment. Very toxic in terms of trying to actually properly recycle those blades. And also all the fuels and all the effort it takes to actually build and then construct the damn thing. Another topic for another time, debatably. Now they say, quote, at the site in South America, the e-fuel said to be produced in virtually carbon-free neutral manner. The EU had planned to detail a plan measure on December 10th, but a so-called CARB package had been pushed back to later that month. It remains to be seen whether plug-in hybrids will continue after 2035, and whether cars with range-extended gasoline engines will be allowed. If they run on low-emission fuels, logic suggests that these cars are likely to continue. But logic and politics are like oil and water. Good metaphor. There's oil in there. I give myself a slight pat in the back. Yeah, most politicians around the globe are, I would argue, corrupt and or moronic when it comes to pretty much all subject matters, especially business. And again, this is going to be still terrible. They say it suggests that they can continue. The question on whether PHEVs and range extenders running on fossil fuels will be banned or not is still in the air. Limiting ICE sales to new cars that run on less harmful fuels might not be enough to save jobs mentioned earlier. It seems wildly unrealistic that the infrastructure needed to support synthetic and biofuels will be ready in just 9 years. Yeah, that's an issue too. Even if you wanted to make these things at an absorbently high cost, then how do you scale it? That is a monumentous thing in and of itself. Now, they say that whatever happens, the EU's ruling impacts only new sales of a few cars, so you'll still be allowed to regular gasoline if you already own one. Meanwhile, the EVs are gaining traction across 27 EU member states, as well as in the UK. Yeah, because they're being bullied to purchase them. Some governments are putting 50% plus taxes on gas engine cars. A lot of these people are being bullied to buy these unreliable, government-controlled, well, very easy, a lot easier to hack and control remotely. They're not technically all controlled by the government, but yeah, these disposable EVs, they're being pushed on people. Again, some people want them. I kind of joke it's the people that don't know how to do an ROI or, look at the total cost of ownership analysis. But nevertheless, they say, quote, for the first 10 months of the year, cars without combustion engines represented 18.3% of total sales, based on the most recent sales data released by the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. Yeah, in UK, they're gaining traction in these 27 EU member states: UK, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. Which, especially stupid places for EVs because it's very cold there, and batteries do not work well in the cold. You lose a lot of range in cold areas. There's a lot of shrinkage in the cold areas with batteries. They say, nevertheless, that's still a long way to go until they surpass hybrids, which account for 34.7%. Plug-in hybrids have 9.4% to share through October, outselling diesels for the first time. According to, again, not purposely trying to butcher all these names necessarily, according to Apostolatos Tiziakoutos, maybe, the EU wants to lay a groundwork for a, quote, economically viable and socially fair, sounds like Marxism, transition to climate-neutral drivetrains. It's considering, quote, all technological advancements to curb emissions, including less polluting combustion engines. Can't but think it's just more of the, you'll own nothing and be happy. EVs are also pretty expensive, and yeah, in terms of EV lasting more than 10 years because the battery, yeah, it's disposable junk. That's why I hate them, personally. Also, 3 pedals in a gas engine, you can't beat that. It's the best feeling in the world. Now, they say, although most of the automakers oppose the ban, a handful of companies insist that EU should stick to the original pledge to outlaw the sale of new cars in gas engines. I wonder who or why. They say, in particular, Volvo and Polestar, both owned by, well, I have to say it like this, China's Geely. They want the ban to be enacted in 2035. Because again, China is there's a ripping off technology and making things for dirt cheap. You can't beat China. And EVs, again, are just glorified smartphones on wheels. And again, Volvo in particular and Polestar, why would Polestar want that? Yeah, they're an EV company. It's the one thing they make. I would argue not well. I'm just not a fan of the EVs in general. They look kind of quirky, but I mean, Polestar also used to be connected to Volvo. Again, they used to be one kind of like GM. You had General Motors has Chevrolet, Cadillac, all that kind of stuff. They later spun off Polestar from the Volvo company, but they're both owned again by Geely. And again, China. All the major automotive companies like Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen Auto Group, which again, fun fact, Volkswagen Auto Group is many companies, including Volkswagen, of course, but also Audi, Bugatti. You got Porsche, one of the best ones out there. You also have Lamborghini. I forget. It's always Bentley. Yeah, Bentley. I always forget BMW. BMW, also a great company. BMW got Rolls-Royce and Mini in terms of their lineup. But again, some of the best are, and then Mercedes, obviously Mercedes-Benz. I mean, let's try the BMW, Mercedes, and Volkswagen Auto Group, some of the best car companies on the planet. While they're not, making cars that, break after 100,000 miles. I'm only kidding. To Porsche's credit, that's one of the most reliable sports cars out there. They cost a pretty penny of course. But again, these companies can't win against China and EVs. Even the U.S. manufacturing, with all the government subsidies the U.S. has pissed away on EVs, even then, only Tesla's made a profit on EVs. And you could debate, did they really? Because again, they make a lot, like billions of dollars, selling emission credits to legacy auto manufacturers. Again, these companies should grow a spine. Germany should grow a spine. They've had that in decades. And tell the EU to piss off. They want, again, this fuel will be, again, technology, it's a marvel. There very well might be a magical technology that allows synthetic fuels to be made for a fraction of the cost tomorrow. Who knows? The propensity of that happening, I would argue, very, very low. It's one of those things where, again, it's been a concept for decades, just like hydrogen. It's been a concept for decades. It works on a small scale, but not cost effectively. So again, this is one of those things where, yeah, they're technically still for sale. I don't really count this as a political win. I really just, it's still a de facto ban. Again, it helps in the short term, but if you're these major manufacturers, you should still be scared to death. Because the gamble is, they are hoping and praying either one, the EU dissolves, which would be great, they get rid of this law completely in the next couple of years, next 9 years, or magically some engineer out there, and again, I kind of joke and say, engineers are wizards, they're brilliant. If they can make that fuel, again, I'm so skeptical that will happen. I still consider this a de facto ban. So it's slightly good news, but still not great. But as always, let me know your thoughts and comments, because I'd be fascinated to hear what you have to say. And let me know, if you had to buy one German or European manufactured automobile, what would you choose? I mean, I'm a little biased. My vehicles have to have 3 pedals, obviously. Not a lot of options these days. Basically, BMW and Porsche, some of the best ones out there. I love a Porsche 911 with a stick shift one of these days. So if I had to choose, a car made in Europe that I had to own, I get a Porsche with 3 pedals. But let me know your thoughts and what you would buy, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Now, going over to the business blunder of the day, Ford hitting 138 recalls of the year, and we look at a couple of the top of them. Now, this brought to us thanks to Motor1.com, specifically Jeff Perez. And they say, quote, Ford has issued 138 recalls this year. Here's all of them. Now, in December, Ford has issued 138 recalls spanning millions of vehicles, and that number could still go up before the end of the year, because, of course, it will. Hilariously enough, they have the abomination Ford F-150 Lightning on the screen picture there, which not only had a lot of recalls, also loses about $50,000 per truck sold, and also has such low demand. They paused production a couple times throughout the year, and are now rumored to be debating, do we continue down this road? Especially as this is a political issue, because automobile, very highly regulated industry across the globe. In the U.S., you're not going to have that $2,700 tax credit going into 2026. That's going to affect a lot of consumer activity. Especially if they look at that truck that costs, $70,000 plus. Without that $7,500 tax credit, are you still going to make that purchase on a vehicle that's going to depreciate like a rock? Going to be recalled pretty frequently? Yeah, I can't but think. Yeah, probably. Again, Ford had one of the most egregious recalls of the year. Ford had an issue, I believe it was a Mustang E-Mach, their little bastardized EV Mustang crossover SUV thingamajig, in which it actually basically bricked the vehicle, as in, the vehicle needed a software update. It won't let you do anything. It had to sit there and wait for it to update eventually, which I would be so irate if that ever happened to me. Reason number 9,758,345,006 reason why I do not own an EV. My vehicles will always have gas engine and a third pedal, also known as a manual transmission. I will die on that hill. I don't care if I'm the last person on the planet. I'm digging oil with a shovel to get to that oil to fuel my baby. I will have a vehicle with 3 pedals. I love my old Honda Civic. Maybe someday a Porsche. Who knows? But diving the article, again, credited to Jeff Perez. They say, quote, it's been a rocky year for Ford at the recall front. At the end of November, the Blue Oval had issued more recalls than any other manufacturer, a whopping 138 of them in the time of this publication. The recall spans multiple model lines and encompasses millions of vehicles. The earliest of Ford's recalls began in mid-January, when the company issued 4 recalls ranging from a loss of drive power to misassembled steering gear. Yeah, I also remember they actually had trucks so poorly assembled they had mismatching headlights and seats. Again, I don't know if they're inebriated when they're assembling these things, but yeah, the quality assurance is not there for the most part. And again, I mean, some of these recalls are just so comically bad. According to data from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Ford's electrical system faced the highest number of recalls, with more than a dozen recalls related to backover prevention or the backup camera, which, again, I'm not going to actually fault Ford on that too much. Even Toyota had a 1 million car recall because of the camera systems in the back. And spoiler alert, a lot of these subcontractors and manufacturers of the widgets that make a vehicle they're shared by multiple manufacturers. Again, you should still do due diligence when you're taking these inventories, testing them for actual production or putting in your vehicle. They clearly, I don't think they do. They say, quote, second only to Ford's Chrysler, which issued 47 recalls thus far this year. GM had issued 26 recalls. Volkswagen Auto Group issued 21. And both Honda and BMW issued 19. Here's a little infographic there, a pie chart. Which, of all the recalls issued in 2025, Ford represented 35%. It makes General Motors look reliable, which is saying something. Dear God. Now, they say, quote, as we know, though, recalls aren't always a bad thing, especially if they help identify a larger manufacturing issue. But for Ford, racking up more than 100 recalls through August is causing significant hit to the automaker's reputation and the bottom line. Yeah. Again, last year, in one fiscal quarter, they spent, I believe, right about $835 million on warranty work, which pissed off everyone from shareholders to consumers to dealers. Everyone hates that stuff. There's a big discrepancy. I think I pontificated about it before. I'll do it again. Dealerships don't like recalls. It's because warranty work or warranty pay from the manufacturer is a fraction of what they make for any usual work on the vehicle. It's free to the consumer, but again, the company, whether it be Ford, General Motors, or this, Chrysler, they pay the dealers directly to diagnose and fix the issue. They have to diagnose it really quickly, and the time in which they have to fix the problem is very short because, again, a lot of these, they're paid hourly. So again, these mechanics are pissed because when they try to diagnose a problem, they don't have a lot of time to do it, and they got to fix it really quick. And again, it's causing a lot of upset shareholders, a lot of upset Ford owners, and the dealerships don't like them because consumers, I mean, you get them in the showroom, but not in a good way. It's hard to upsell someone when they have their 50th different recall for the damn vehicle. I think the Ford Bronco is up to 18 alone. It's going quite bad. I say, quote, Ford CEO Jim Farley recognizes the issues surrounding the recalls, but it doesn't mean the number of recalls is likely to stop. In a recent interview, he said the company has employed even more inspectors and engineers to identify quality issues in the field, and recalls for older Ford models is potentially going to go up. Now, again, this is a quote from Jim Farley, the current CEO, and he says, quote, recalls that we had on a lot of vehicles are engineered from 2015 to 2016. A lot of the software OTAs that are not that expensive, which I'm actually going to stop that quote right there. To Ford's credit, I actually don't think it should count as a recall if it can be fixed over the air with a wireless update. And again, I think that should be the standard for all manufacturers. But again, right now, the U.S. government and the NHTSA, that legally counts as a recall against them. So again, even Teslas have that. Most car companies are doing over-the-air fixes, for better or worse. Personally, I don't like that much tech in my vehicles, but again, he did know that many of these recalls are software related that require you not to go to the dealership. Now, he said, continues saying, quote, I wouldn't actually correlate for investors. Oh, sorry. He says, I thought he was joking. He's not. I wouldn't correlate for investors the number of recalls and cost. Actually, our base coverage makes up more than 60% warranty cost, and those go down as we drive up these quality improvements to our product. But these products are out there in the market, and I expect more recalls, potentially going up at Ford, because we want to protect the customers. We have more inspectors, more engineers looking at our quality issues in the field. These are vehicles that are 6 to 7 years old, and we want to do what's right for the consumer. It's the longest lagging metric, recalls for quality improvements. That will be the last one that turns. Warranty coverages are already going down. That's something we're really proud of. Which, again, in terms of some of these long-term problems, every CEO has had it. Famously, Mary Barra, CEO of General Motors, came into the job where one of the first recalls, and again, happened before she was there, but the issue was before she was there, but the recall occurred when she was very early in her tenure as CEO, was the ignition recall. The ignition to the vehicle, spoiler, it was broken. It caused pretty much every General Motors product a stop sale, as in, dealers could not sell them. They could not even demo them to customers, and they replaced every single one of those damn things. It was terrible. And some people blamed her. I didn't, because again, they installed those and chose the subcontractor to make those prior to her tenure to affect those changes. And again, that's why some people are beating up Jim Farley. Again, not all this is his fault. It rolls up to him, but in terms of who's choosing these subcontractors, and he's doing the right thing, getting the guys out there who could actually do more inspections to make sure you're taking care of the customer long term. Again, I think that type of favor, that's going to go a long way. Consumers are going to appreciate that. Just reviewing a couple of these more boring ones. Starting in January, one of the worst ones is loose transmission cross bolt members, which sounds really fancy, really complex. Just loose bolts that weren't tightened to spec, which I don't know how you missed that one. Consider you program a lot of these machines to torque it to a certain actual specific foot-pound. Another issue was the instrument display panel failing in January. Couldn't drive a vehicle. One of the more, I guess, hilarious for dark humor. This is February. Steering wheel may turn unexpectedly, affecting the Ford Mustang in February, which Ford Mustangs already have a high propensity to hit people leaving a car show. This is just insult to injury. I also have taillights failing in February. Improperly secured seatbelt buckle anchor, which, again, how are you not torquing that bolt accurately? Are you not calibrating your tools? Are you not paying attention? Like, it suddenly just blew my mind. You also have trailer brakes might fail, loss of power while driving from undetected battery. Front windows may fail to reverse direction. That was in March. Steering column shifter may detach. That was another in March. Transmission may shift unexpectedly into neutral while driving. That was another March one for the Ford F-150, most popular vehicle they sell and most profitable thing they sell. Again, if you're going to pay attention to quality anywhere in the portfolio, take care of the trucks. That's what you're known for. That's where your highest gross margin comes from. Gas trucks. Again, you lose money on the EVs. Gas trucks is what keeps the company in business. Again, you have another one. Loss of brake function affecting the Ford Expedition Navigator. Airbag indicator not working. Airbag's not working. Driver passenger door trim may detach. Engine failure might cause a fire. A couple of those actually. Leaky oil. And again, some of these are just software updates, but they add up so badly in terms of the hardware issues. Again, people are going to stop buying this stuff eventually. Ford has a great culture around their trucks. People love those damn things. Personally, it's a truck with an automatic transmission. Why the hell would I want that? I would never buy one, obviously. But again, they're up to now 138 recalls. And there's still time in the calendar year for them to do a couple more. We'll see how much this hurts them going into 2026 in terms of more and more people looking at the headlines. I gotta say, Ford, you're once again the business blunder of the day. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Again, don't forget to take time to give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, and a comment, letting me know how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.